We actually, Chr Hansen was founded a long time ago by a guy called Chr Hansen, and he actually started with a product, an enzyme that coagulates in the milk for cheese and things like that. Today we also have a lot of colors, natural colors. We got the colors for some of the Fanta products, for some of the M&Ms that's actually made by Chr Hansen. But it's actually said that Chr Hansen, very quickly after founding the company, turned his nose against the US. He saw potential over here. And in a forum like this, he actually stood up and drank about half a liter of this enzyme that coagulates the cheese to show that it wasn't dangerous. This is one time I'm happy I'm in IT, so I don't have to do that. But Chr Hansen is right now have production facilities for the cultures, 5 places. It's in 2 places in Denmark. It's in Paris. It's in Milwaukee, and it's Germany. So we have about 2,300 employees, and we've actually been owned by a French company called PAI until about a month ago. They sold the rest of us to another Danish company, Novo Nordisk in Denmark. The project I'm talking about was actually started to try and reduce the complexity of our whole production IT. And if we look at the system we have today, it's about the same as most companies, and I think we heard about it today earlier also in the presentations. We had a lot of systems and a lot of different Excel sheets, access databases, whatever system you can think about. We even have a Lotus 123, which is very old. And we were really trying to see how can we reduce the amount of systems and get a better way of doing things. So in an ideal world, we would go all the way to the right side, but we also know that that wasn't really possible for us. So we ended up having about 14 systems. This includes systems in the background to transfer data and things like that. We built about 4 swim lanes, saying that we have like a planning level, we have an execution level, we have a laboratory level where we approve the product, and then we have a swim lane that has to do with optimization and development. So as soon as we started this, we kind of tried to figure out some of the buzzwords. Why is it that we do this? And of course, we wanted to try and improve our efficiency, our flexibility, quality, and compliance. And some of it was to try and turn around the products much faster, meaning if we can get the planning done better by being able to investigate a little bit on the products to say, okay, it doesn't need as long in the fermenter, we could very easily earn the money that we wanted to do. So when we were looking for what system to use also, we actually didn't just look at the Wonderware EMI. We also looked at other systems. We looked at, should we use SAP BV? We were all ready for, you can say, for the finance part of it. We are using the SAP BI. So could we just put all our information into that system? Should we build our own system, our own data warehouse? Or should we go with the Wonderware EMI? At that time, Wonderware EMI was just a note on a piece of paper. So it took a little bit of investigation and a few trips to Lake Forest to see their development facility to kind of convince us that it was a good idea to go the way of EMI. The other idea was to not make everything ourselves and actually learn from the experience from other companies and have Wonderware do all the work for us, which is very nice. Some of the things that we really focused on when we started the discussion with Wonderware was to have both Wonderware systems and non-Wonderware systems in our data warehouse. It didn't really help us much if we could only pull data in from one system. We needed to be able to pull it in from our quality system, from our culture bank information. We need to pull in non-conformity information. All these things that we saw that we were now trying to build a system around, we wanted to be able to pull it in and be able to put into one report. Another thing that was important for us was that it was a user-friendly system, that we didn't really have to have like people with high knowledge of some skills but it actually needed to be anybody that could do that, even me. We needed it to be an incremental update. We needed not to be updating everything every time. So at the same time, we also needed it to be available for everybody. So we needed to find a way, how should we actually show this to everybody, and that people themselves could go in and pull the data instead of have a few people that are doing all the reports. So some of the things that we then started focusing on was, well, one of my mantras is having the right data at the right place at the right time. That to me was very important when we started figuring out what we needed to do with reports. We wanted to be able to compare the different plants. One of the unique things for Chr Hansen is that we can actually produce any of our strains at any site around the world of the 5 production sites. And we wanted to be able to learn from the different sites what the small differences are on the sites. When I say we can produce any strain, of course there's always a few differences, and maybe one place is actually throwing out one extra batch. And we wanted to learn why is it that that place is throwing out one more batch than the other side. And so it's very important to us that the whole system was global. And the other thing is that when I was traveling around trying to figure out what are we actually going to report on, you talk to the plant managers, and one of the questions that comes up during a session like that is, well, you know, how are you doing? Well, every side said, well, we are the best. One side said, well, you know, we have the highest yield. I said, okay, that sounds pretty good. It turns out that they have some products that doesn't need to be concentrated compared to the other sides. So you went on to the next side, and they say, well, you know, we are the best. Okay, I say, well, why are you the best then? Well, we have the most batches produced. Well, they had all the short growers. So then you went to the next side and said, no, we are the best. So I said, okay, well, let me hear why you're the best then. Well, we have the most uses of our fermenters. Well, they had all the long growers, so they didn't need to turn the fermenters a lot. And I could have left it there. Maybe everybody would have been happy and thinking they were the best. But we actually started to think about, okay, let's find a way that we can compare this with, so we compare apples with apples and pears with pears and so on. After that, we started to look at requirements, and one of the things was to say, okay, today you can do a lot of different reports from our old system. Now, if you switch to the new ones, what are the most important reports that you need to be able to do also in the future? Now, I asked for about 10 reports from each side, and I think I got about 40 from each side that they just couldn't live without. But actually, when you kind of dig into these reports, a lot of them had actually a lot of the same information in them. So what I tried to do was actually say, okay, these 200 reports that are now received from you is maybe only about 10, 15 reports actually in real life. Some of it had a small detail here and there, but as I see it, it should actually be a benefit from the company that didn't look at that detail, that they now have this detail to look at. We have today more than 2,500 reports and in our old system, and we're trying to reduce that down to around 50 reports in the new system. So after we kind of decided on, okay, what are the reports we want to do, we started looking at what are the systems then that we need to integrate to all this, and we came up with this architecture that you had the mesh sites on each side. And now you see there's certainly six mesh sites. That's actually because we also wanted to do this for our R&D, not just our production facilities. So it'll be easier knowledge sharing from the R&D to the production facilities. And then we had some other systems down in the left corner that we also wanted to be able to pull in and be able to compare with. One of the tools that we've been using to show all this has been business objects. So for me, it was very important that we could actually put business objects on top of EMI and be able to do our reports in that tool. So the end users would still be able to work as they are used to. Some of the things right now are changing a little bit because some SAP bought business objects. That changed a little bit on our license structure. So it's now going to be a little bit more expensive to do it the way that we're doing it. So we are looking a little bit more at Tableau right now to actually try and fit that into our production. And the reason for Tableau is because it's so closely connected to EMI today. So then the hard part started, and together with Inventors or Wonderware, we actually started mapping all these different data that we wanted to pull into the reports there. the hard part for me was to try and map it to a mesh system that I didn't know, so I got some help from Wonderware on that part. And then we started figuring out also the other systems and took those one at a time. Now, when I talk about doing reporting, I actually just want to take something that isn't really EMI, at least not yet. We are actually pulling historian data into EMI, but this picture is just taken from the trend tool from our historian. But something that we really looked a lot at when we started all this reporting is actually looking at the golden badge. And this, you can say, is well, it's just a straight line. Well, that's because I wasn't sure that I could show you our fermentation curves and things like that. That might be a little bit of a secret. But we actually today are able to take a batch, and instead of starting a big calculation on what is the golden badge and so on, we actually have it today, so we can go in and take a batch that has a very good QC results or laboratory results, and then promote it to be a golden batch. That means that when the supervisor is looking at a batch that he doesn't know if it's actually working well, he can click on a button, and then suddenly he can see how the promoted batch looks compared to the old one. And this gives us a much quicker response to if something is actually not working well in production. This way, the operator will soon see if the batch is good or bad. And in theory, and as soon as we learn a little bit more about our products through all the information, we will maybe be able to actually stop the batch early in the process. By that way, not really using our downstream and actually don't run it through our QC. And we could start the next batch much faster. Another thing we started doing is actually pulling in information about the different batches we have. I mean, trying to have one screen that gives you all the information about what is the batch, how was it doing, what's any non-conformities and things like that on it. Now, Ravi talked about not having a lot of green dots and red dots. Now, one thing that it makes it a little bit easy for us is that we can go in and say, okay, all the dots are green. We can just release this product. We don't really need to look a lot at the results and things like that, so we can just release it. Now, we built this screen also so the planning would be able to go in a little bit early to see if there was any warning signs that the batch couldn't be used in a final product, if any of the bulks. And also, he would be able to just click on any of these rows, and he will pull in more information about what the product was looking like. All these information, of course, had to be put in EMI. So another thing that we started doing was doing an automated mass balance calculation. We need to calculate if actually what comes in one end also is what comes out at the other end. You would think that it would be nice that you put in 5 kilos and get out 20, but our QA department don't like that part. So instead of people actually doing a manual mass balance calculation, we now are able to actually just take the average weight of production and then multiply it up, and then you can see how much came in and how much is what came out. So instead of doing all these manual things in Excel, it's just a report that automatically runs. We do a lot of QC on batches. We are able to also go in and have QC look at where was all the red cleanings, what are cleaning between the batches. They can see which batches ran after which batches. So they can see what kind of cross-contamination tests they need to run, making it a lot easier for the lab to actually figure out what to run. All these reports are automatically loaded into our document container. So the end user can actually later, if they want to see what was the release criteria at that time, they can go in and pull out the information and then see what the results was, how production was looking, whatever information that we put in there. We put about 6 or 7 different reports in there that gives you all from how production was running, how QC was, were there any non-conformities, how did the components look, and so on. And all these informations are available. You just go in, type in the batch number, and it pops up for you on the screen. Now, what a lot of people talk about is, of course, savings. And now, when we actually started this project, it was more like a vision that we wanted to be able to pull in more information, and we wanted to be able to do a lot more reporting and figure out what is the right parameters for our batches. But as we went along, suddenly it turned out that we needed to do a return of investment on things. So some of the things that we talked about was that if we can combine the QC parameters, it will be easier for us to compare it to the parameters in production, and then actually see which parameters are the right ones in production. By doing that, we then are able to optimize a lot better on our different products. Also, what I talked a little bit about before, if we are able to look at a graph during the process, or maybe some parameters, you can stop the process earlier and actually get the next batch running, and don't run everything downstream. And you can kind of reduce the bottlenecks there. Also, you are actually able to find the real bottlenecks. We were looking at our downstream, thinking that our centrifuge were the big bottleneck. But actually what we found out when we were able to pull in all the information more about running times and things like that, you easily see that that actually wasn't our biggest problem. We actually had to look a little bit more at our cleaning. That was actually where our bottleneck was. Also, back to my mantra a little bit. Anywhere in the process, being able to pull in the right data at the right time, at the right place. So with that, I'll stop. I think the time's up.